Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. First, thanks for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. It helps YouTube's algorithm find my channel if you hit the like button. So if you wouldn't mind, would you hit the like button before you leave today? I really appreciate it. Um, I'd like to thank my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 3,700 recently, and we're heading towards 3,800. That's amazing and wonderful. I really appreciate your support. There's a lot of different ways to support the channel too, if you'd like to. If you'd like to check out some of the ways you can support the channel, if you visit the video description, there's links to my website where you can purchase jewelry. There's links to my merch store where you can get other goods that are related to my brand. And there's a link to buy me a coffee where if you just want to send me a little money as a tip for my troubles, I appreciate that. And there's links to my Patreon, which is where my premium content is available. I have 4 different tiers. If you want to get rid of the ads, my lowest tier, which is $5 a month, is available over on Patreon, so you should check that out. If you'd like, my Patreon has multiple tiers though, and some of the upper ones you get exclusive tutorials and behind the scenes content, and if you do my 3rd level tier, you get live streams a couple of times a month. So check those out. Sign up if you want to. I'd love to have you over there. But let's get started on today's project. And today's project is going to be a bracelet. And it's going to be a bracelet of a type that I've never made before. I picked out a pretty Labradorite to be the stone on it. It's actually going to be a bracelet that has 2 clasps on it and a hinge. And in theory, and I don't know if I'll have the time or the energy to do this tonight, when I get to that stage, you could make multiple heads for the bracelet so you could swap them out with different stones. But I may only have time and energy to do just the one today, but I could always come up with another one later. So let's get started. This is my design idea book. These are available in my merch store if you like them. I like them because they have this, it's graph paper, but it's just dots in the corners instead of actual lines. And it allows for me to draw things without those lines being distracting, and it's come in handy since I got it, so you should check those out. This is what I drew up today. I've seen a number of these over the years where you have a hinge down at the bottom and a latch that pops into the side of the head here. I'm going to put one on either side so you can disengage both and swap out the top. So we're going to make the top first probably. This is going to consist of a lot of sheet, and then we'll put some kind of a hinge down here. I haven't really made that decision yet. I did measure out the size of the pieces of sheet I'm going to need. This is going to be a hollow space on either side with the underside open and the top with sheet on top. So this is how big the top piece of sheet is, and these are how wide the side pieces need to be in order to make what I want on either side. So we'll be soldering those upright like that. Theoretically, if I can pull this off. Like I said, I have a Labradorite that I picked out. It's got some nice color to it. It's a kind of a cushion shape. And what I'll do here is I'll make a bezel for that, put it on a piece of sheet. I'll build a round box, probably with a piece of 18 gauge for the edge. I'm getting a little low on 18 gauge, so I may run out, but we'll see. I'll do my best. And then we'll make the bands, and we'll cut some slots in the side for those little box clasp things to go through, and then we'll set it up so you can clasp them and unclasp them. And then we'll do a hinge at the bottom. So this is going to be a big build, and it's probably going to take me all day, but I'll cut out the boring parts for you, and we'll get going by starting with the bezel. Oh, materials. 3/16 inch bezel, fine silver, probably 26 gauge. 18 gauge. I'm not sure what I'm going to use for the sheet up here, either 22 or 26. 22 gauge and 18 gauge for the sides here in sheet. And then for the pin I'll probably use, I don't know, 14 gauge round or something wider if I can find it. And then there's some little decorations here that'll probably be 12 gauge square or something like that. So, but that's about all we'll need, I think. So let's get started. All right, let's get on making this bezel here. So I'm going to file the end flat. I should probably, this is a deep stone, so I should make sure this is thick enough. I think it should be okay. It's a pretty deep stone. Sorry, I got the hiccups a little bit. I always leave a little bit extra for filing purposes when I cut these. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make this into kind of a more angular shape in order to get a nice solder joint. Come here. Never takes very long for those. There's not much metal there. Quite a few people asking me where I sell my jewelry, and I mostly do local art shows and things like that. But I have my stuff in a couple local galleries. I just pulled some out of one in California because it wasn't really. It seemed like it was costing me money and not making me much. So I need to find a new gallery for some of it. But I probably sell the most at the local art shows and things. There's a couple of good ones around here. The only thing bad about those is I'm getting older and it's getting harder and harder to do the setup and takedown from those. You know, dragging everything out to your spot and setting up the tent and you know, kind of carting all your stuff out there multiple times. I do like doing shows though, to a certain point. If you're doing a show and you're not selling anything, it's always kind of a bummer. So I think before I put a bottom on this, since I'm going to make, it's going to be right here. I'll have some decorations, but I want this to be about the size of the circle. And so I need to figure out how big of a circle that is. And so it's geometry time. Yay! So we got about a 30 millimeter diameter, so pi times diameter. 1 times 3 is 3, 4, there's 9, 9420. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, so I need a piece of, because I'm going to make the, if you look at it from the side, I'm going to make the kind of hollow space down here that this is going to sit on top of next. And so we're going to have to cut about a 95 millimeter piece of 18 gauge sheet. So I have to keep in mind too, I've cut some templates from these things here in order to lay it out on some sheet. Now this is 22 gauge, which I'm going to use for the outside here. And I'm going to use 18 gauge for the sides. So this is how much 18 I have left. This is how much 22 I have left. So I have to get 4 of these off of here. I think I can get all 4 of them over here. I may just have to go slightly shorter. That should still be big enough. So I think that's what I'm going to do. This is 90-ish, about 90 millimeters. So it's just a little bit less than 94. So let's just do it there. I'm just going to cut that part off. So okay, cut it off of there. It's kind of straightening up the sides. Looks like I got tons of solder on the pad left over from yesterday's. Give a little more here. Solder tends to go towards wherever the heat is. So if I put the solder on the outside and heat from the inside, it'll tend to go that way through the crack. I think for this is kind of between ring mandrel size and bracelet mandrel size. I'm going to use my little homemade mandrel thing here to try and get it a little round. I will have these in my merch store one of these days when I get around to making a few more. I'll probably make them out of oak though, or ash or something like that. I'm going to do a little filing to get it neatened up here. The edge. This is what I use for the backs of most bezels, but sometimes for bigger things I'll use thicker stuff. Okay, so it reminds me of the little tambourine I made a month or two ago. If you haven't seen that one, I'll put a link up there for the tambourine. It's kind of an interesting one. Okay, I'm going to flux it and put some solder on the inside. I'm definitely going to need more solder for this. It's a big piece. People like to use like 100 little tiny ones. My philosophy's always been to use like 5 or 6 big ones. So the difficulty here is that sheet on the bottom is harder to get up to the soldering temperature than this band that's up top here. Even though the band is more massive and should take longer, the sheet, having fire exposed only to the one side, just won't reach temperature as quickly as the thing up that's exposed right to the flame on top here, generally. So, same situation people run into when they're beginners, especially. When you end up getting the bezel up to temperature pretty quickly, but the sheet underneath it is hard to get to reach that. So you have to start thinking about where you put the heat and how long you leave it there, and how much mass different things have. All that stuff plays into how good you get at doing this. So, okay, so now I'm just going to trim off this top here. I thought it might help to get it centered if I didn't have it all splotchy looking. Now it's splotchy looking in a different way. Another thing, sometimes when you're fluxing things, they move as the flux boils and dries. So if you do it kind of slowly like this, sometimes you can keep it from moving much. And then add a little bit more. Less likely to jump around on you. We got a lot of people asking me about how I learned how to do this. And I started in the mid-90s. While I was teaching high school, I took a couple of classes from a guy named Don Morris, who I think is still teaching. But I really liked it, and I learned a lot from him. So I owe him a debt of gratitude for showing me how to get started in this. He's a funny guy. He's interesting. And he knows a lot. So let's throw a little bit more over here. But so I took a couple classes from him, and I just started playing with it on my own in my spare time. I learned to do a few other things. And I eventually hooked back up with Don for a while and hung out with him and kind of soaked up a lot of information from him about how he does things. And then continued to play with it on my own and learn new stuff. And started teaching high school kids how to do it in the late 90s, the basics of this. And once I moved to a location where I could hold classes, I used my garage as a workshop. One spot there just really doesn't want to go. There we go. Started teaching adult classes there, and I've done so since then, even though we've since moved from that location. Of course, the pandemic interrupted some of the live classes. Back to doing it on a limited basis. With lots of protocols in place. So I've never had any formal jewelry education, so that gives me imposter syndrome every once in a while when people tell me how good I am at this or whatever. And so, but I am good at learning things, so I like to teach myself new things, and I've continued to try to push my abilities over the years. More so lately with the YouTube channel, it's helped me to kind of try to, you know, broaden my horizons a little bit, get me out of my ruts. So I always appreciate suggestions. I don't much have any interest in working with gold, mostly because of the expense of the raw materials. So with silver, if you screw something up, it's not that big of a deal. If you look on the drawing here, I wanted to do some little slivers of silver here that stand up just to kind of imitate the roundness of the outside, since we have a cushion shape. One of the cool things about this is that there's always something new to learn. There's so many different talented people out there. Every time I turn on YouTube, I see something new that I've never seen before, or some clever technique that I've been doing in a really hard way for a long time, and then I find out somebody's got this really easy way to do it. That's always kind of both a humiliating and fun experience at the same time. Okay, I think that's probably good. I'm going to do a little filing now to make these taper down to the end. So, spending a little time doing this. Okay, so I did a little more filing, and then I did some cleanup with the Dremel a little bit to smooth them just a bit. There's no real reason for these. These are just perfect. They're completely decorative. So they will add to its kind of structuralness. Structuralness, is that a word? As a former English teacher, protest the word. Take a little gander at this. See, got them sort of centered. It'll be easier to see when it's cleaned up a bit. So I'm going to let that pickle for a while and we can start working on those bands. Okay, to start with, I'm going to cut these out. So I'm going to start by cutting out the 22 gauge sheet. I made a couple of templates. I traced this with some thinner paper. So I'm going to cut these out first, and then I'm going to use the 18 gauge with these. These are templates too, but I didn't make 4 of them, so I'm going to have to reuse them. Each one I made would be slightly different than the other one, I would guess. So. Alright, now we got to figure out how to get all these off of here. Okay, so I'm going to clean up the other ones just like I cleaned up this first one. I went off camera for a few minutes to try something out. One of the things that I had to do this time was, so I'm making a box that's going to be this direction. Ideally, it would have been easier to cut this out at a curve, you know, straight out of a big piece of sheet. Now, I didn't really have enough. I had kind of a narrow piece, and it would have been hard to get all 4 of those they're cut in that way. So what I decided to do, and I was hoping this would work, and it is, it's just kind of a lot of work to get it to bend this far. To go ahead and like curve it over a bracelet mandrel or whatever mandrel you have. I was going to make this a little more oval anyway, so that it sat better on a person's wrist. Round ones tend to rotate, and it's going to have a heavy top, so I wanted it to be a little bit more oval. So I think that gets me pretty close. You know, I can probably do it like that, and then cut that off at an angle, and then do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I was doing. I was using the bracelet mandrel, and I also have a steel thing that I got from somebody else that's a cylinder like this with multiple different size cylinders coming off of it. It's good for shaping things around, so I'll be using both of those things. So I'm going to move over to that other spot. Apologies for the mess over here. I haven't had much time to clean lately. So see, we started out this way, and I've gradually bent it over here. And I'm using my plastic-headed hammer, and I C-clamped this down to the bench here. And if I use the plastic-headed side, I can start to get a little curve in it. Again, I'm doing this the hard way rather than just cutting out the shape that I would have liked to have done had I had some more material, but this will give you a different technique to do. And a pinch. So we're starting to get a little bit of a curve there. You have to periodically flatten it back out, and you can either do that, or you can just, I don't know if you can see that over there, put it on here. After we get it bent along most of the whole length, I'll stop and I'll take it back over to the other spot, and I will heat it up to the point where it's kind of a dull red and then let it cool off. That's called annealing, because what we're doing right now is causing the metal to get stiffer and springier. Every time you pound on it or bend it, it's called work hardening, if you're new to this. And I'm really asking it to do something it doesn't want to do when I'm bending it against the, the easiest way. It's easy to bend this way, not so easy to bend this way. So it's starting to get pretty stiff, so I'm going to go anneal this a little bit. I'll be right back. Okay, I annealed it. Should be a little bit softer again. So back for some cathartic pounding. Still got a ways to go. So. Okay, we're back again. I think that's probably close enough. I'm going to do the other ones off camera. Okay, I got these all approximately the same. That was quite a bit of work getting them to do that, so don't do it the hard way like I did it. Just if you have the materials handy. So I think next I need to bend these so they match nicely. And I might use the bracelet bender for that too. I think I'm going to do this in 2 stages. I'll try and get it soldered on the end down here first, and then I'll get it laying against there tighter, and then I'll get the other side the rest of the way. So let's try that and see how it works. Attached now. As long as you get that solder thing going and you can get it in contact with the metal, it should stick to it. If I can get it to stay like that. Okay, one more. So I went ahead and I filed them, the little uneven spots and everything away. I think it's time to put these are going to be kind of hinged together like this down here. This is going to go in here. And so if I just cut straight up and down like that, that should be all right. Just kind of eyeballing out. That looks like about how steep it should be. I can always cut it steeper, but I can't cut it less steep. So I'm getting tired. I may have to finish this video in the morning. Needs to go just a little bit steeper. I'm going to put an end cap in. It's got to curve inwards just a little bit. So this is one of the kinds of things that I like to do, is find something I've seen somewhere else before and try and kind of reverse engineer it. I've never made one like this before, but that looks all right. Pretty close anyway. Let's see. I think I'm going to go ahead and file this in a little bit of a curve. I might use the Dremel to do this. Be right back. I curved this inwards like that, and I also tapered this a little bit so that the piece can just kind of rest right in there. We can solder it in, but I do want to make sure everything here is flat. Okay, so I'm thinking I might sweat some solder on the outside of the sheet here so that it's easy to just kind of plop it on there and heat it till it flows again. Go ahead and trim this off. Okay. Okay, I was away from the camera for a little while and I did a couple of things. One, I soldered in some little tabs sticking out from this side, just a little ways. Okay. And on this side, the one that already had some sticking out, I rounded them off as well as rounded those off. And if you notice, I rounded off right there as well. So there's going to be no catching on anything. So, and then I marked a center point there. And I'm going to try and get those lined up. So it was about, I found a piece of, I think it's about 12 gauge that I pulled a while back, and I thought I'd use that for the pin. And that's about 3/32, I think. So Probably just go straight through now. Okay, back to the other area. I'm not going to actually solder that in there until I've assembled the box clasp part that's going to attach these all together. I think it would be best to figure out how we're going to make those. I'm back. I slept a little bit, and so now about 4 in the morning. So I cut myself some 22 gauge sheet here. I was initially gonna, my original thought was on these things to do some kind of a vertical box catch, but I think it might be too hard to do that way. And I was gonna run the button out the side, but I think I'm gonna do the buttons on the top. I've seen them online where they had a button on the bottom, but that might be hard to get to if this was snug on your wrist, so it might be best to do it on the top. Alright, so my feeling is I'm going to solder it in like this. This will be folded in half back that way so that a piece of this sticks through a slot that I'm going to cut over here. Actually more of a rectangle probably. And then there'll be a hole through here with a, I'll put a little disc on top of it or something. So you push down on it and it squeezes the thing together so it pops out of a slot. That'll be over here. So, in theory anyway, so let's, I think I'm going to bend these. Well, I think what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to drill some holes in here and then create a slot for this to slide into, and then I'll be able to decide where to drill the hole up here in order to put a little post on top of that you can push on. What I need to do is figure out how much of this I can leave, and I think I'm going to cut this a little bit shorter. Ideally, it'd be best if it was pretty close top there. So I'm going to drill a hole. If I can try and get it straight down there if I can. Be right back. Okay, so a couple of things I've done. I neatened this up a little bit more and I made some decisions. So, and I drilled a hole in the top here. So what I'll do is I'll be soldering this, the base of that little slot there with the tongue sticking inside of there. But before I do that, I'm gonna try and solder a little post of 14 gauge round, I think. I just picked up a little bit of solder on the bottom of that. There's a lot of mass in this side of the bracelet compared to the little piece of metal I'm trying to solder to it. So most of the heat's going to go on this thing. going to go ahead and drill this thing and hope that I get it centered and then try and file out that slot. Okay, so a couple of things I've done. I widened this into a bigger rectangle because what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount a little piece of, I think, 14 gauge square on top of this right here to be the catch on this. So when you pop it in, it snaps in place, and I'll slope it on this side, but then you'll have to push down to release it on the other side. So let me find some 14 gauge. Seems ridiculous to have to heat this lower part, but if you don't, you end up overheating one part and not heating the rest of it enough, and then sometimes you'll melt things. The noodles. By the way, this is not a beginner project. I think I got it. Let's see if it stays on with it. Dunk it in here. Okay, it's not very tight yet, but proof of concept. When I'm all done soldering and everything, I'm going to work this back and forth so it gets springy. And so it has a tendency to stay up tight, at least as much as I can. But when you do this, it pops into place. So I'm going to sweat a little bit of solder on the back of this flattened ball, and I'll try and get it to sit up there. Now I just need to put this pin in and then pickle it, and then I'm going to take a little break before we set it all and polish it. So it's not perfect. I'll give you a critique of myself here. I didn't get the angle quite right here, so I don't know if I can do much about that at this point. And it has kind of an interesting shape, almost a heart shape, which I wasn't really planning, but I took these in a little bit further than I had intended, and that's okay though. It makes kind of a unique looking bracelet. So it's bulky though. So I'm going to go ahead and try and solder this pin in without screwing anything up here. This is my little piece of easy solder. I'll put those in the corner so I don't mistake them for regular hard solder. I'm going to actually dab a little flux this time with a toothpick in order to help eliminate the chance that it's going to, at least reduce the chance that it's going to flow where I don't want it to flow. Still moving. It's okay, I'm going to heat the whole thing up and throw it in the pickle for a while. And then I will polish it and we'll finish it up. And so we've reached the end. I got this all polished up and ready to go, so I'm going to go ahead and set this stone. A lot of people use burnishing tool as bezel pusher. I just use the side of my needle nose here as my bezel pusher, basically. So if I had the energy and the time and I didn't need to get this video out this weekend, I could make additional tops like this with different stones you could swap out with this bracelet. And that was, you know, depending upon how long this one took, that was in the plans. However, I'm supposed to be releasing this video in a few hours, and I'm not going to be able to edit it that quickly, so and that would take me another couple of hours to make another one of these. So but I think that might be a good idea and a good selling point. However, I will tell you, this particular one is probably an advanced piece in that there's a lot of pretty precise soldering in it, and you're making multiple components. You have to get things within pretty tight tolerances, otherwise you know, your clasp and stuff won't work. So those are things to consider. I'm interested in what people say about process. Like I said, I'm mostly self-taught, so it'd be interesting to see what people who've done this for a long time would say about how I did this one. Oh, one thing that did happen that I'll have to fix later, but I'm not going to fix it right now, is one of my little button tops came off while I was polishing. So there was a lot of little nooks and crannies in this one. I didn't get a great polish on the inside. That's something you should think about as well. I could probably, with more time and some thinking about it, I could figure out ways to get in there better. But for now, I'm just going to leave it like this, and then later I'll come back and I'll add a new top on there, and maybe I'll get a better polish on the inside. But let's see. So there's one, there's two, there's our bracelet. So I will take some better pictures of it, hopefully hiding the fact that one of the buttons is missing. And that's it. All right. Well, thanks. That was the double clasp hinge bracelet. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, and then check out some of my other videos. I got a lot of really cool videos here, over 160 now. There's material that's good for beginners, there's material that's good for intermediate sort of folks, and there's some stuff if you're more advanced, just to give you some ideas and some different ways to do things. So check it out, subscribe to my channel, I'd love to have you, and don't forget to visit the video description to see the other relevant links and ways to support my channel. So thanks for watching today. Happy silversmithing, take care.